If your new watch feels off after a few months of using it, this is for you. Most people don't realize that many watches were already on borrowed time before they even bought them. In 2026 alone, thousands of people have bought and are wearing watches that are quietly losing resale value and relevance. But no more. After years of dealing in luxury watches, I have made a list of 12 watches you should absolutely avoid this year. This list has the mildly disappointing purchases to the ones that will haunt your wallet for years. And by the time we get to number 1, we'll talk about a watch that costs nearly $5,000, runs on 3-year-old smartwatch hardware, and has owners reporting multiple warranty repairs within the first year. This watch will break your heart. But first, let's start with number 12. Number 12. Daniel Wellington's. Daniel Wellington did something remarkable. They built one of the most recognized watch brands in the world in under a decade, not through watchmaking, but through Instagram. Launched in 2011 by a Swedish entrepreneur with essentially no background in horology, Daniel Wellington became the aesthetic of a generation. Minimalist dial, interchangeable strap, clean enough to photograph well, aspirational enough to gift. It worked so completely that by 2019, the brand was reportedly generating over $200 million annually. While the watch looks fashionable, there is another issue lurking behind that clean design, and it's harder to see at first glance. It looks generic. Not just similar to other watches, but identical. The same thin case, the same simple dial, the same interchangeable strap system that appears across dozens of fashion watch brands. That's because Daniel Wellington doesn't manufacture these watches itself. Like many fashion labels, the production is handled by Chinese suppliers that offer pre-existing designs to multiple brands. Different logo on the dial, same watch underneath. And here is what was inside those watches the whole time. A cheap quartz movement that costs even less when purchased at volume. The same movement you would find in watches that retail for $25. And that's where the math starts to look uncomfortable. A user on a watch forum summed this up in a way that's hard to forget. Daniel Wellingtons are like having a BMW with a Volkswagen Beetle engine in it that you paid BMW prices for. It'd be fine if it cost as much as a VW Beetle, but instead you're paying BMW money and being told, well, at least it's not Ferrari prices. Daniel Wellington retails their watches between $150 and $250. For that money, you can buy a Seiko, a Citizen, or a Casio with stronger build quality, better movements, and decades of watchmaking behind them. You can even step into entry-level automatic watches if mechanical movements are more your style. Which makes it clear where the brand saved money. The brand knows its audience is not buying for watchmaking. They are buying for the look, and the look is still good. But once the strap discolors, the plating wears off, or the movement stutters, and with these, it often does, there is nothing underneath worth keeping. Daniel Wellington disappointing people quietly is a specific kind of bad. The next entry is louder about it. Number 11. Invicta Pro Diver. Walk into their shopping channel and browse. Find an Invicta Pro Diver. The sticker says $400. The sale price? $40. You just saved over $300. What a deal. Except you did not save anything. Because the $495 price was invented. Invicta's business model has been documented and complained about by watch communities for years. Their MSRP manufacturer's suggested retail price is set at a level that bears no relationship to the actual value or typical selling price of the watch. The discount is not a temporary promotion. It is the strategy. The watch is almost always on sale because the inflated price exists mainly to make the sale tag feel dramatic. The watches themselves are a Rolex Submariner homage with a Seiko quartz movement. For what it actually costs, it is acceptable. The movement is accurate. The design is recognizable. But the company's entire marketing strategy is built on making buyers believe they are scoring luxury at a discount, when the truth is, there was never any luxury to begin with. The buyer walks away feeling like they beat the system, when in reality, the system was designed that way from the start. The next watch does something similar with software, selling a watch that looks current right up until it does not work the way it is supposed to. Number 10. Skagen Falster Gen 6. Skagen built its whole identity around the idea that minimalism is luxury. Clean lines, thin case, a Scandinavian name that sounds expensive even if you've never heard of it. The branding leaned heavily on Danish design culture. The idea that simplicity, restraint, and elegance signal quality even when the materials themselves are fairly ordinary. And honestly, it worked. For years, Skagen watches punched way above their price. You'd see one on someone's wrist and think, that looks like it costs more than it does. That was the trick. That was the whole point. They mastered the art of visual value. Watches that photographed well, wore slim under a cuff, and quietly suggested taste without screaming about the brand. The Falster Gen 6 walked into that same room and tried to play the same trick, except this time, it came with a smartwatch price tag. And that's where everything fell apart. You're paying somewhere around $250 to $300, depending on where you find it. For that money, you get heart rate sensors that drift inaccurately mid-workout, a battery that needs charging every single day without fail, and a Wear OS experience that feels like it's running in slow motion. Users started flagging all of this publicly by 2023. Forums, Reddit threads, and long-term reviews all started repeating the same complaint. The watch looked premium on the outside, but behaved like aging hardware the moment you actually used it. The minimalist design is still there. Nobody's arguing with how the thing looks. But when you're charging a watch every night and still missing your step count, the pretty face stops being enough. Minimalism only feels luxurious when the product underneath actually works. When it doesn't, the clean design just starts to feel like a distraction. The verdict? If you want a beautiful watch that does nothing, buy a cheap quartz from any department store. If you want a smartwatch that actually works, Skagen is not the answer in 2026. For Skagen, it's a pattern. The next brand is noisier about it. Bigger cases, heavier branding, and a software situation that is somehow even worse. Number 9. Diesel on Fadelite and Diesel Grift Gen 6. Diesel watches have always had an attitude. Big cases, heavy branding, the kind of watch that doesn't apologize for taking up space on your wrist. You either love that or you don't. They were never designed to be subtle. Diesel leaned into the oversized aesthetic long before it became a short-lived smartwatch trend. The problem wasn't ever what these watches looked like. The problem was what was happening, or rather, not happening, underneath the surface. Style was always the selling point. The function was supposed to catch up later. Diesel is part of the Fossil Group family, which means when Fossil announced that they were exiting the smartwatch business entirely, the Diesel software quietly became orphaned. No new development pipeline. No innovation roadmap. In tech terms, that means the platform is effectively frozen in time while the rest of the smartwatch market keeps moving forward. Also, the companion app, the one you need to actually manage the watch properly, runs with persistent bugs that have been reported for years and remain unfixed. There are app crashes, connection failures, and users on the App Store reporting having to restart the companion app 15 to 20 times before it recognizes the watch is connected. Not a one-off glitch. A consistent experience across multiple users, across multiple devices. What should be a simple Bluetooth handshake turns into a routine troubleshooting session. The hardware itself is prone to physical wear faster than the price tag suggests it should be. The build looks heavy-duty. In real use, the finish scratches easily, and the band shows age quickly. The aggressive styling makes the watch look indestructible, but the materials don't always live up to that image over time. And the resale? Secondary market analysts have flagged these as value traps. A Diesel watch bought at retail today could lose most of its purchase value within a year, not because the market crashed, but because there's no ecosystem keeping it relevant. Once the software support disappears, the market treats it like outdated electronics rather than a watch. Loud branding, abandoned software, fading hardware. That's the Diesel story in 2026. The next entry on this list is a well-known brand selling a product that has drifted away from its own lineup. It got left behind by the people who built it. Number 8. Casio G-Shock GBD H1000. Before anything else, let's be clear. G-Shock makes some of the best watches in the world at their price points. The brand's reputation for durability across decades of genuinely tough products is earned and real. This is not a G-Shock problem. This is a GBD H1000 problem specifically. When it launched, this was Casio entering the fitness watch space seriously. GPS, heart rate monitoring, the indestructible G-Shock casing, priced around $200 to $250, and reviewed decently at launch. It looked like Casio had finally built a fitness tracker that matched the G-Shock identity. And then the rest of the G-Shock lineup evolved past it. By 2025 and into 2026, newer G-Shock models with updated display technology made the GBD H1000 feel genuinely old. The interface is clunky compared to Casio's own newer releases. The heart rate sensor is multiple generations behind what the brand now ships in updated G-Squad models at similar price points. Even basic step counting lags behind its successors. This is the watch equivalent of buying last year's phone model at full price when this year's sits on the shelf next to it. Same brand, same store, better product right beside it, and no indicator anywhere near the GBD H1000 that you are buying yesterday's tech. If you're buying a G-Shock for pure durability and don't care about tech features, this isn't your problem. But if the health tracking and fitness functions are part of the reason you're buying, the GBD H1000 will underdeliver against its own successors and against rivals from Garmin, Polar, and others who've been doing this longer. The next watch on this list built an entire smart platform, ran it for 6 generations, and then told everyone it was done while the watches kept selling. Number 7. Fossil Gen 6. For a long time, Fossil was the name in Wear OS. When Samsung was still figuring out Tizen, when Google's own Pixel Watch was years away, Fossil held the platform together. 6 generations of smartwatches, sold across multiple fashion brands, keeping Wear OS relevant in department stores worldwide. Then January 2024 arrived. Fossil's CEO walked into an interview and said the company was done with smartwatches. Done. Full stop. Exiting the market. Redirecting resources. No Gen 7 coming. What followed was a fire sale. Watches that retailed for around $300 dropped to $79 to clear inventory. Most sold quickly, but not all of it sold. Here's the issue in 2026. Some of those watches didn't sell. They're still sitting on third-party retailer shelves, new in box, full price, no discontinued label, no warning anywhere near the listing that the company behind the product announced its exit over a year ago. Buyers discover the situation after the purchase, when they look for updates, when they contact support, when they realize the watch they are wearing is a product its own makers have publicly moved on from. Fossil has promised software support for a few years post-exit. In practice, that means patches when necessary and nothing more. No new features, no evolving compatibility, no investment. The Wear OS platform itself has continued developing without Fossil's involvement, which means compatibility gaps between the watch and the phone in your pocket will only grow. The Gen 6 hardware wasn't bad when it launched. Decent display, reasonable battery, all the standard Wear OS functionality. But buying it today means buying into an ecosystem with no growth, no development, and a parent company that has explicitly moved on. The next watch is more abrupt, poisoned by a software update that should have been caught before it shipped. Number 6. Samsung Galaxy Watch 7. The Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 launched as one of the best smartwatches of 2024. Not qualified praise, it genuinely earned strong reviews across the board. Good hardware, solid health features, clean software, and real investment in the platform. Tech journalists recommended it without hesitation. And then the One UI 8 update landed. Reports flooded Samsung community forums and tech channels in late 2025. Battery draining from a full charge to zero in around 7 hours with minimal use. Background health apps, Galaxy Health, and Google Assistant are running continuously for hours without being opened, burning through power that should last a full day. Users who had been happy with the watch for months suddenly found themselves charging it twice daily. Samsung acknowledged the issue. They promised a fix. An update rolled out in January 2026 for the South Korean market first, with a sequential global rollout following. Some users reported improvement. Others saw no change. And here's the thing. This is Samsung, a company with the resources and engineering depth to get this right. The fact that a software update managed to break battery performance across one of their flagship watch lines and that the fix took months and still didn't fully resolve it for all users is a meaningful credibility problem. Buying a Galaxy Watch 7 inches 2026 means buying into uncertainty. You don't know if your unit will be affected. You don't know if the fix will fully work. You might get a great experience, or you might be charging your watch twice a day and filing error reports through the Samsung Members app. For a watch at this price level, uncertainty isn't acceptable. A software disaster is painful. But the next is where buyer's remorse gets personal. This is a watch that people brag about owning, right up until they try to sell it. Number 5. Tudor, Rolex secondary market hype models. Between roughly 2019 and 2022, the secondary market for certain Tudor and Rolex pieces went completely irrational. People weren't buying watches to wear them. They were buying watches the way people buy stocks, expecting the price to keep going up. A Tudor Black Bay that retailed at a few $1,000s was changing hands at double or triple that on the gray market. Certain Rolex references had waiting lists stretching years, with buyers paying premiums to gray market dealers just to get immediate access. It felt like the watch world had discovered an asset class. Then the correction started. Watch platforms started tracking what secondary market analysts and communities were watching in real time. 2025 and into 2026, certain hyped models have seen significant price drops from their peak secondary market values. The buyers who got in late, the ones who paid premium prices for watches as investments, are now sitting on pieces worth considerably less than what they paid. Stop comparing them to stocks. Rolex CEO says luxury watches are not investments. A lot of other knowledgeable people have been saying it for over 20 years, and the market keeps finding a new generation of people who believe otherwise. The watches themselves, the Tudor Black Bay, the Rolex Sport references, are still excellent, well-made, beautiful, worth wearing. The problem is buying them at hype prices in 2026 with the same mindset that drove the peak. That market has already corrected. It is not in a hurry to reinflate. Buying any watch in 2026 as a financial investment needs much more research and skepticism than the past few years suggested. The next 3 entries are about buying the wrong thing. Watches that fail the buyer in ways that have nothing to do with market timing and everything to do with what they actually are. Number 4. Any fashion house smartwatch. Emporio Armani. Guess DKNY. Picture the category, not just one watch. There's a whole tier of fashion house smartwatches that operate on the same logic. Take a Fossil Group hardware platform, dress it in a famous logo, and add a premium to the price. Emporio Armani. Guess Connect. DKNY Minute. Kate Spade Scallop. Different names, largely identical internals, wildly different sticker prices. You're paying anywhere from $200 to $350, depending on the brand. You get the Snapdragon Wear processor that was already aging when these watches launched, Wear OS updates that stopped being ambitious years ago, and a fashion brand name that means everything in clothing and almost nothing in technology. The appeal is obvious. You want a smartwatch that doesn't look like a tech gadget. You want something that goes with an outfit rather than screaming fitness tracker at a dinner table. That desire is completely legitimate. The execution, though, is where this category breaks down. Fashion houses outsourced their tech entirely to a single supplier that has since left the business. They slapped logos on the outside and called it innovation. The result is watches that look great in product photography and disappoint quietly in real life. In 2026, alternatives exist. Google's Pixel Watch looks understated and actually works. Samsung's Galaxy Watch lineup, battery drama aside, is a real smartwatch. Garmin makes fitness trackers that don't look like gym equipment anymore. The fashion smartwatch category peaked and never updated itself. That's the most expensive way to learn that a logo is not a feature. The next entry is a watch so bad at resale that secondary market analysts started using it as an example of what not to buy. Number 3. Armani Exchange Connected. Walk into a department store in any major city, and you'll still see it. The Armani Exchange Connected watch, sitting behind glass, catching light, looking exactly the way a smartwatch should look if a smartwatch wanted to be mistaken for a proper luxury piece. Retail price, around $295. That number made sense in 2018 when this watch launched. In 2026, it doesn't make sense at all. This is another Fossil Group product, Same engineering platform that powered Michael Kors, Skagen, Diesel, all dressed up in Armani packaging and priced like something it isn't. The movement inside is genuinely old. We're talking Snapdragon-Wear chips from multiple generations ago, struggling to keep pace with software demands that didn't even exist when this hardware was designed. But here's the real problem, and this is something most buyers find out too late. The Armani Exchange Connected holds almost no value on the secondary market. We're talking less than 20% of the purchase price after 1 year. You pay close to $300, wear it for 12 months, try to sell it, and find out you're working with around $50 or $60 if you're lucky. That's not depreciation, that's evaporation. The watch looks good in photos. It looks fine on the wrist if you're not doing anything active. Try to use it as an actual smartwatch, and the cracks show quickly. Software that lags, a health tracking system that can't get an accurate read on a metal bracelet, and an ecosystem that stopped receiving meaningful updates. Armani, as a clothing brand, has real prestige. Armani Exchange, as a smartwatch, it borrowed the name and shipped the hardware of a much cheaper product. For the next entry, the brand name is bigger, the price is higher, and the failure becomes harder to defend. Number 2. Michael Kors Access Runway, Gen 6, Emporio Armani Smartwatch 3. Some products fail loudly. This one fails politely. The Emporio Armani Smartwatch 3 and the MK Access Runway Gen 6 sit in a specific price bracket, $295 to $350 at retail. That puts them in direct competition with watches that are objectively better at being smartwatches. At that price, you could get a Google Pixel watch or a Samsung Galaxy watch, actual purpose-built smartwatches from companies whose entire identity is built around software and hardware integration. Instead, these fashion entries give you the Fossil Group platform in premium packaging, a platform that is now officially a dead end. The resale situation is genuinely alarming. Secondary market data on platforms like eBay and Chrono24 shows these watches retaining less than 20% of their retail value after 1 year on the wrist. That's not a price dip. That's the market communicating clearly that these watches have no future worth pricing in. What keeps them on this list at number 2 rather than number 1 is that they're at least honest about what they are: fashion products. They never pretended to compete with Apple on health features or Samsung on software. The failure here is the pricing, charging smartwatch money for a product whose tech infrastructure has been abandoned. The buyer who picks one of these up in 2026 is paying a premium for nostalgia, a logo, and a platform that its own creators have moved on from. Number 1 is loud and specific. It's the kind of purchase that will haunt your bank account and your wrist simultaneously. Number 1. Hublot Big Bang E Gen 3. Hublot is a genuine luxury watchmaker. Their mechanical pieces, the Big Bang Unico, the spirit of Big Bang, represent real craft, real materials, real Swiss watchmaking heritage. The brand has earned its place in serious collections. The Big Bang E Gen 3 is something else. Released in 2023 and priced at $4,800 for the ceramic versions. The Big Bang E Gen 3 is a Wear OS smartwatch, a very expensive Wear OS smartwatch. Inside the premium ceramic and titanium case, alongside the sapphire crystal and the H-shaped screws and all the Hublot design language that justifies the price tag, sits a Qualcomm Snapdragon Wear 4100 Plus chip. A processor was announced in 2020, already superseded by newer Snapdragon silicon when the Gen 3 launched, running on a 1-day battery that requires daily charging. At launch, tech reviewers flagged it immediately. Hublot is more form than function, and at this price, you could buy multiple Pixel watches or a Galaxy watch and still have thousands left over. They noted plainly that the brand's audience may not care about technology, but for anyone who does, the value proposition collapses on inspection. The companion app reviews on the Apple App Store tell a specific story. One owner, who describes having around 60 to 75 watches in their collection, including Rolex and Breitling pieces, reported the Big Bang E requiring 2 warranty repairs within the first year, the crown assembly falling off and the internals replaced. They wrote that they had lost all trust in the brand for this product. Another reviewer described the watch constantly disconnecting from their phone, calling it the most expensive smartwatch on the market with the most connectivity issues. Zero watch face updates in a year and a half of ownership was another complaint for a product at this price, which is not a minor gripe. The standard Hublot Big Bang loses around 30 to 40% of its retail value immediately on the secondary market. The eGen 3 has the same depreciation pressure, combined with the additional problem that smartwatch technology ages faster than mechanical movements. The Snapdragon Wear 4100 Plus is already old. In 2 years, it will feel ancient. In 5 years, the software support question will be the same one haunting every other watch on this list. A mechanical Hublot at least contains something that holds its value in a way a smartwatch cannot, a movement that does not become obsolete. The Big Bang eGen 3 has the case of a luxury watch wrapped around the soul of yesterday's tech, priced accordingly. Here's the twist behind this entire list. The worst watch to buy in 2026 isn't one model. It's any watch sold on the promise of smartwatch capability, backed by a company that's already gone. That's the real lesson of this entire list. Bonus pick. The watch you should buy instead, Garmin Forerunner 165. For everyone watching who came here with the real question, okay, so what do I actually buy? The Garmin Forerunner 165 sits at around $249, which puts it in the same price range as several of the watches on this list that will disappoint you. Garmin is a company that builds watches as its primary business, not clothing, not bags, watches, and GPS devices. The 165 has a bright AMOLED display, accurate GPS tracking, solid health monitoring, and Garmin's proven battery life, measured in days, not hours. No abandoned software, no exit announcements, no fashion logo tax, just a watch from a company that is still entirely committed to making watches. For the same money you'd spend on most of the things on this list, the 165 gives you something that will still be relevant, supported, and actually useful in 2 or 3 years. Here's the pattern running through every single watch on this list. It's not that they're all bad products. Some of them, at the right time and the right price, were reasonable purchases. The problem is 2026, because 2026 is when the gap between what these watches were sold as and what they actually deliver has become impossible to ignore. A watch with abandoned software is a watch that's already dying, just slowly. A watch bought for its resale potential during a market correction is an expensive lesson. A fashion brand that outsourced its entire tech infrastructure to a company that then walked away, that's not a smartwatch. That's a logo with a battery. The watch industry has a specific kind of pressure right now. Tech companies are making watches that track your health better than any mechanical movement ever could. Traditional watch culture is pushing back with craft and heritage. The losers in that tension are the brands that tried to exist in both worlds without being excellent at either. Know what you're buying. Know who's still supporting it. Know the difference between a watch that has a future and one that has a label. That's the whole lesson. If this saved you from a bad purchase, or confirmed something you already suspected, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. We cover the watch industry the way it actually works. Drop a comment below. Which one of these did you almost buy? Or worse, which one are you wearing right now? Next video coming soon. See you there.